Hi everybody, so what we're going to be doing over the next couple of weeks is working on some post-production for 360 filming. So a lot of what we do in 360 VR, call it what you like, I mean it's not really VR, but Adobe calls it VR, as you'll see in a minute. So, you know, we can use that term as well. A lot of what we do when we're working in 360 VR content is post-production, and it's important to know some of the basics of that, and then also like some slightly more advanced techniques, and that's what we're going to be doing over the next couple of weeks. So let's make a start. So what we've got is a couple of different bits of footage. The first one we're going to be using is this director key clip. Okay, so if I drag this down onto my new composition symbol, that's really important because obviously this is an unusual format. Remember, this is an equirectangular. So it's a sphere, just like the map of the world, and what's happened is we've wrapped that sphere effectively onto a cylinder, and then unrolled the cylinder, if you can kind of imagine that. And so the top is stretched across the top, which is what we call the zenith. The bottom is stretched across the base here, which is what we call the nadir, and obviously the center, the equator, if you like, has all been sort of squished and what have you. So anyway, what we're going to be doing with this footage then is some basic sort of housekeeping, if you like. So what we've got is we've got this shadow, and then all this sort of gubbins at the bottom here, which is the base of the tripod, and then I've also added some bottles and bits and pieces to represent like microphones or, you know, a Zoom recorder or whatever, and we have to get rid of all of that. We've also got, because it's on a low profile tripod, and I'll explain a bit more about that in a second when we can actually see it properly. It's also a bit wobbly because it was quite a windy day, so we also have to stabilize our footage as well. So what we're going to be doing in this tutorial is stabilizing and patching. And then we're going to be moving on to getting rid of this guy, who is the director of this scene. So this is our actor, this is our talent, and here's our director. And he's a bit of a wally, and he's walking up and down, and he's getting in the way of the shot. And obviously we don't need him in the shot. We just want to be seeing our talent, so we need to get rid of him as well. So that's going to be a bit later on. Okay, so let's jump straight in. The first thing you'll need is the VR comp editor. If you can't see the VR comp editor, go up to Window and turn it on. So it's at the bottom here, VR comp editor. Okay, and then the other thing you need to do, or you might need to do, is just a little bit of housekeeping within After Effects before you start. Okay, so you need to go to File and Project Settings and just make sure that this is set to your best graphics card. So in my case, it's the GPU Accelerator Metal. Okay, and then you've also got to, when you add a 3D camera track a bit later on, you might get a pop-up, and I'll explain that at the time. But effectively what's happening is, if you go into Preferences and Scripting, what it might do is when you say add a 3D camera track to this VR footage, it might pop up and say you need to allow scripts, and then you'll say okay, I'll do that, click on that, and you'll get this dialog box. But you can also find it in in After Effects Preferences, Scripting, and you just need to check this box, allow scripts to write files, etc. Okay, and then you should be good to go. So what we're going to do, first of all, make sure our footage is highlighted, and we're going to come into our VR comp editor. If it's popped up somewhere else on the screen, you can drag your VR comp editor around and dock it wherever you like, just like normal. I've docked mine down here, and I'm going to add a 3D edit, and we're going to basically be doing the same thing as we've done previously with the camera track, but with a slight difference. This, what it's going to do is it's going to make us a new composition of a 1920 width, so that's 1920 by 1080, our standard HD footage. Although you can change it, and in the next week's tutorial we will be changing that value. But for now we'll keep it at 1920 by 1080, 16:9, so it'll just look like a normal bit of footage. And what it'll do is it'll basically say that's a 1920 window which I can use to sort of move around inside my 360 shot. It's easier if I just show you. Okay, so I'm going to add my 3D edit. And what's happened now is I've got two new compositions. Okay, I'm slightly confusing things because I've got my render queue up here as well, so I'm going to turn that off. So here's our original footage. That's the director key. That's not going to change because that's our original composition. And over here, After Effects likes it if you switch between the compositions inside the VR editor rather than here, but you can see the two tabs here that you'll be working on. Okay, and what's actually happened is it's created two new compositions, as I say. So you've got now within this first one, you've now got these two new compositions, one of which is the output render composition. So this at the moment looks the same as the original footage, but it's going to change. And the other one is this one, Edit 1 3D. So if I zoom in on this a little bit, with the drag wheel on my mouse or your trackpad or whatever, if you hold down the C key on your keyboard, you get this orbit tool, and now we can move around inside our 360 footage like so. Okay, so we can see it in 3D mode, and we can also see the whole equirectangular if we go back to output render. So far so good. Okay, and as I say, we've got these two new compositions up here, and they're reflected in these two tabs here, but After Effects tends to prefer it if you just click between the two. Don't ask me why, it just sort of it starts to glitch out a bit if you do anything else. That might just be mine, of course. Anyway, so what we're going to do then, first of all, is we're going to stabilize this footage because it's a bit wobbly, and if we play along, you can sort of see, if we're watching the camera here as we play it through, look, it's starting to, and kind of, you can see it moving around a little bit. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to click on, we're going to go into Edit 3D first of all, click on Properties, and we're going to apply a 3D camera tracker. Okay, and then it goes Analyzing in Background, step 1 of 2. And if you go up to your effect controls, you can see it initializing just like we did when we did the camera tracking a few weeks ago. It's doing the same thing. This is the point though, when you click that apply camera tracker, that's the point at which it might say you need to do the scripts bit that I mentioned earlier. So then you just click, okay, I'm going to do that, and then just check that box. Okay. It hasn't done it on mine, of course, because I've already done that. I've already clicked that. But yeah, anyway. So what we'll do now is, obviously it's going to take a little while just to analyze this. So I shall speed this up. Yeah, because we're still at 0% on our analysis at the moment. So I shall let it do that, and I shall speed this up and come back in a minute when it's done. Okie dokes. So now that the camera tracker's figured it out, we're now going to create a camera just like we've done previously, like so. And here's all of our tracking nodes. But of course, because the camera itself wasn't moving, it's not been able to figure out like how far away certain things are or how close certain things are, so it's kind of going, all right, I don't know how far away these various things are. All these nodes are the same size. But what it has done is it's recognized bits that it can track all the way through, and that's all we need. Because what we're now going to do is we're just going to click Stabilize Footage, and there we are. Now we're done. Now here's the thing, right? Once you've done that, don't hold the C key and move this around, because if you do, you'll start to warp the original image, and we don't want that. Okay, so just leave that be now. Go back to the output render, and now what we'll see is if we play it through, our camera isn't really moving. And if we compare that to the original director key and we play that through, we should hopefully see. You see there's that movement at the bottom of the screen as the camera's moving around. Yeah, compared to that. So now this is stabilized. Okay, whoops, I've done what I just said not to do and click between them, see how it starts to glitch out. By the way, if you are, I should have mentioned this earlier, if you click onto the 3D edit and you find you can't see it, it's just the transparent background, what you need to do is make sure it's set to active camera, because if it's set to like front or something like that, then you'll only see the camera, you won't see the actual image itself. You just have to make sure that that's set to active camera, because it does sometimes default to something else. Okay. Right then, so going back to output render. So now what we're going to do is get rid of this gubbins at the bottom. Okay. And in order to do that, what we need to do is add another VR edit. We don't want to use the original one because we'll muck about with our footage. You can see this little button here saying reorient, and that's checked. That's to make sure this is stabilized. If we turn that off, the stabilization would go. Okay, but of course what it means is now any changes that we make to that 3D edit are now going to then mean that the whole thing gets reoriented, which is not what we want. So we're going to add a 2D edit this time, because we don't need to track it now. We're just going to add a 2D edit so we can just work on it as a 2D plane. So here's our 2D edit, and it's going to do the same thing, 1920 window. And now, as long as we're on edit 2, now we can hold down the C key and we can move around as much as we like, and it's not going to change anything because that reorient isn't clicked for edit 2. It's just for edit 1, the stabilization edit. Okay. So what we're now going to do, hold down the C key, and we're going to rotate our image until we can see the tripod, all the stuff at the bottom, and this big shadow. And this is what I was talking about earlier. See, VR tripods or 360 tripods are low profile in as much as all the kind of the width of them is at the base. There's nothing at the top, because if there was, the camera would see it and then it would be very hard to stitch it and patch it out and everything else. So the whole idea is we can't see any of that tripod that's below the camera until we get to these arms here, or legs of the tripod. Okay. There's nothing below the camera that the camera can see, so it can't see any of that the pole that the camera is actually on. All it can see is the legs of the base. Okay, and that makes it easier for us to get rid of. So what we're going to do is use the clone stamp tool, which is this one up here. And you might remember that when we use something like motion tracking or clone stamp tool or whatever within a composition, what we have to do is go into the layers tab. So we double click on our footage, which has now taken us into this layer tab. Okay, and now we can zoom in and we can move our footage around. Remember, hold down spacebar to move your footage around so we can see it properly. Okay, I'm going to move this down a bit so I can see it a bit more. And the key thing then with the clone stamp tool is we're going to be picking up bits of the clip from elsewhere and matting them over the top of the thing we want to get rid of. Okay, you'll also notice that not only have we got the tripod and these bits and the shadow to get rid of, but also the way that the footage is oriented. So it's all pouring into this sort of zenith, so this nadir point here. So you see it's all distorted. So we're going to want to get rid of that as well, because otherwise you're still going to see that. So I'm going to start up here with this white line. I'm going to hold down the Option key on my keyboard. I'm not sure what it is on PC. Just try it until you get this target. So you get that target and you go. Before you start, actually, you can come into your Paint tab and you can adjust the size of your brush, for example. So you click on there and then you can select a brush size. So I've gone for a nice sort of large size with a feathered edge. Hold down the Option key on the white line like so, and now you don't click on anything else, you just move it across, and wherever you want to put it, you just paint it in. Okay, and you can see what's happened here is there's a little crosshairs appeared and it's saying I'm sampling this part of the image and I'm putting it wherever you're clicking. Okay, now the key thing with this is it isn't just about clicking. There is actually a technique to it, because what you want to avoid is doing long strokes, because otherwise you'll see that like there's been a paint stroke there. So what you've got to try and do, it's sort of like a two-layer thing. The first thing to do is start by taking bits and doing small clicks. Okay, like so. So you see how it's sort of distorting over there. So I'm going to pick up bits of this brown like so. Pick up bits of this texture here, I'm going to move that along. Okay, but then what you'll also find is that as you do that, as you do little clicks, it's all very well and it does create a nice sort of random base, but you'll also start to get this slightly fluffy look. I don't know if you can kind of see that. If I do more of this, you'll hopefully start to see what I mean. And particularly with a feathered edge brush, what tends to happen is as you do these little clicks, it all starts to look nice and random, but then if you pull back away from it and you start to look at it more objectively, okay, what you'll end up finding is that you get these kind of slightly cloudy looking bits. Can you see what I'm talking about? If I pull back, you'll see what I mean. Look, it's kind of cloudy where I've been clicking, and that's fine. It's because it's taking little bits of sampling from elsewhere and kind of overlapping and what have you. So once we've got that, once we've done little stabby clicks to get rid of it, the next technique is to go over it again, and what you do now is circles. So you click on a piece that you want to sample, okay, come over here, and then you're going to do increasing circles like that to sort of mat it in. Take another bit from over here like so. That's it, and then you can really start to get rid of some of that cloudy effect. See what I mean? Same from over here, something like that. Okay, and what the circles does is it just expands the size of the thing that you're matting, so it kind of gives it a bit more, it doesn't look quite so cloudy, you see? So that's the idea then. I mean, I can still carry on with this a bit more because there's still a bit of cloud there, but I think, you know, for the purposes of this tutorial, that's looking okay. So again, the key thing here is not to move that now, because if you do, if I hold down the C key, well, obviously I'm in the layer panel at the moment. If I go back into my composition now, you can see that it's gone. But if I now hold down the C key to rotate it, look what happens. We can see our our tripod and what have you again, plus all the extra bits that we've just added to mat it out in the first place. So I'm going to hold down Command and Z to undo that movement. So back here. And if you want to see how it looks, instead of moving that around, just go into your output render, and now you'll see here's our stabilized footage with our tripod, etc. patched out, so there's nothing on the Nadir. You've still got your director key, excuse the train going past my house, you've still got the director key here, so you can see what that did look like. And now if we go into output render, that's what we're going to get. Okay, so what we're going to do now then is in the next tutorial we're going to get rid of this guy because he's walking up and down and being annoying. Okay, but before we do that, because we've already added a whole bunch of changes here, it's much more straightforward if we then render that out so those changes are baked into the clip so there's no issues. Okay, and then we'll come back to it. So I'm going to go to composition, I'm going to add to render queue, I'm going to go to lossless and format, and for now, for our purposes, I'm just going to go ProRes 422 high quality, click OK, and I'm going to output this, and I'm going to call it director key stabilisation and patch. Okay, and now I'm going to click save and render, and I shall see you in the next tutorial. Nice one.